Powered by Riverside FM.
Powered by Riverside.
Welcome to another edition of Unconventional Playbook, better known as the UP. Welcome to those of you who are new to the channel. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Helps the channel grow bigger and better than ever. Today we're going to take a detour, one of those detour type episodes. I've gotten a couple of emails on the topic. Didn't know if I was going to cover it. I don't know how it applies to Unconventional Playbook, but I think in actuality it does. It's a story where, even if you're not into true crime, you probably heard of the story. It's a story in Idaho, the Idaho killings. I work on a college campus, so I'm really sensitive to the subject. I coach women basketball players, so I'm always telling them to be aware of their surroundings, be safe. And as a parent, I'm a parent also with two kids that have gone to college. And so when you send your kids away, you want to know that they're safe. And the thing that happened to the college students in Idaho is a parent's worst nightmare. You have just great individuals that are going to school, trying to better themselves, and they come out in just a horrific situation. And the person that's accused of committing these crimes, he's awaiting trial. And it's just been a slow-moving process. But I just wanted to touch on the subject. And hopefully at the end of this pod, there can be some dialogue. You guys put, as usual, send your emails, put your thoughts in the comments. This is about 4 college students that, were expected to have a really good day. There's a football game on campus, University of Idaho football team. A lot of fanfare on campus, a lot of excitement on campus. This is one of these things where, they're going to go to the game, have some festivities afterwards, just have a lot of fun. And so the life of these college students were just cut short. To tie this up, there was an individual, suspect Brian Koberger, that supposedly went into their residence in the early morning hours and committed these crimes. So what I want to do is go through the timeline. For those of you that are familiar with it, you probably know the timeline pretty well. But for those of you that have not heard of the case or are new and really don't have the details, this is just an opportunity to kind of hear what the details are. Some of the stuff has been out there for a while. It's been, pretty old. But it's just parts of it. It's just really intriguing. I am pretty confident that they have the right person in custody, but there are still a lot of holes, a lot of things that need to be answered. I got the timeline here, and I want to go through it. The timeline starts at 1:45 p.m. and it says, after spending several hours at a fraternity party, 2 of the victims, Xana Kernodle and her boyfriend Ethan Chapin, returned to their off-campus house. Kernodle shared with several roommates, including the 2 other victims that were there. The other 2 victims were Kaylee Gonzalez and Madison Mogan. They arrived back at the house after spending time at a bar and grabbing food at the local food truck. So for all intents and purposes, I mean, these college students, typical night, party, stopped at a bar, maybe had a few drinks, and now they're grabbing a bite to eat, and then they're heading home. A phone belonging to the suspect, Brian Koberger, stops connecting to the cell phone network in Pullman, Washington. Now I'm going to stop right there because Pullman, Washington and Moscow, Idaho are basically 20 to 30 minutes apart. So even though they're separate states, Idaho and Washington State kind of border each other. So they're really close. Those two campuses are close. A lot of the students on those campuses spend a lot of time together. So his cell phone stops connecting on the cell phone network in Pullman, Washington, where he lives. And as I just mentioned, it's a short drive from the University of Idaho campus in Moscow, Idaho. 2:53 a.m. Surveillance video shows what police say is a white Hyundai Elantra in the Moscow area neighborhood that includes the victim's house, where the crimes later occurred. The vehicle makes 3 passes by the house. Now, this white Hyundai Elantra is the same kind of car that the suspect, Brian Koberger, has. There's a little snafu early in the case where the police gave the wrong year of the car. It wasn't the actual year that Brian Koberger's car was, but people are making a big deal about it, because sometimes when you have those cars that are 3 years apart, all those cars tend to look the same. So it's easy to mistake the year. I don't understand why people are making such a big deal about it. I know why Brian Koberger's defense team is making a big deal about it, because it's a whole. And when you get those specifics wrong, it allows you to be able to sidestep some of the accusations. And so they have really focused on the police getting the year of the car wrong. So this car, this white Hyundai Elantra, makes a few passes caught on video cameras, caught on video cams from doorbells. There's video of this car passing back and forth in front of the residence of these 4 college students. One of the victims, Xana Kernodle, received a DoorDash at 4 p.m. at the home, according to investigators. At about the same time, another occupant of the house was awakened by what she thinks was an upstairs roommate playing with her dog. So Kaylee Gonzalez has a dog, and the dog was staying upstairs in one of the spare rooms. Kaylee did not live at the residence anymore, but she had just gotten a job that she was going to take, I believe, in Texas. And she was back in Moscow visiting her roommates, basically saying goodbye. She had just bought a new car, so she was showing off her car to her roommates as well. So she decided to spend the night. And so she had this dog upstairs that was really playful. The roommates downstairs thought that it was Kaylee upstairs playing with her dog, the noise that they were hearing upstairs. So this is 4 p.m. Get a DoorDash. You got the dog upstairs playing around, maybe hearing some thumping. 4:05 a.m. Video shows the Elantra returning to the area for a 4th time. So it's already made 3 passes, coming back for a 4th time. At one point, the car did a 3-point turn in the roadway near the house, and the police speculate that the car was having trouble parking, so it had to find a way to park. Again, this car, the suspect is Brian Koberger, drives the same brand of car, and it seems that he's having trouble finding a place to park. 4:12 a.m. Kernodle uses the TikTok app on her phone. Records suggest the downstairs roommate is also awakened sometime shortly after 4 a.m. She tells investigators she hears what sounds like crying coming from Kernodle's room. When she opens the door, she hears a male's voice telling someone something to the effect of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." So think about it. The suspect is a male. Ethan Chapin is a male. And the roommate is pretty sure that it was a male's voice that she heard. So one of the males, whether it was Mr. Chapin, Ethan, or supposedly the suspect, Brian Koberger, she felt like someone said, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." That was at 4:12 a.m. 4:17 a.m., a security camera from a nearby residence picks up distorted audio of what sounds like a whimper and a loud thud. A dog can be heard barking numerous times at some point, and exactly when is unclear. The roommate opens the door, and according to the account she gives the investigator, sees a man with bushy eyebrows, clad in black clothing and a mask. The man walks past her toward the sliding back glass door on the second floor. This is where they speculate the intruder came in. She goes back into her room, locks the door, and it is unclear what she does during the next several hours. Now, this time is pretty important. It's 4:17. And the police or 911 wasn't called until right around noon, close to noon. So there's almost 8 hours accounted for where she sees this intruder in the house, bushy eyebrows. And if you've ever seen a picture of Brian Koberger, he fits that description. Really, really bushy eyebrows. And why the roommate locked herself in the room and then didn't make a move for 8 hours is just really, really puzzling to me. 4:20 a.m. The white Elantra is seen leaving the neighborhood at a high rate of speed. So you can draw a direct correlation to the white Elantra and the events that occurred in the house. You've got this white Elantra driving back and forth, making 3 passes, and then the 4th pass, it tries a 3-point turn to try to find a place to park. And that was the last time it was seen on camera until supposedly after the events in the house, and it was shown speeding away from the residence at a high rate of speed. I mean, it's very easy to draw that conclusion that whoever was in the white Elantra was the person that was probably more than likely responsible for the crimes. That was at 4:20 a.m. 4:48 a.m., Brian Koberger's phone reconnects to a cell network south of Moscow, Idaho, near Blaine, Idaho. So you got to keep in mind now, his phone originally went offline at 2:47 a.m. Think about the chances, number one, of being up that late. And I know these are young people, they're college students, and Brian Koberger was a TA in Pullman at Washington State. So, people stay up late. But again, he's still up. He's still up at 4:48 a.m. the next time his phone connects to a tower south of Moscow, Idaho, roughly a short time after these killings took place. You have to ask yourself, what are the chances that, number one, he's up and around? Most people are in bed sleeping. If he was at home and his cell phone was at home, boy, what a great alibi that would be. But he's not. He's up driving around near Moscow, Idaho, during the time where these murders take place. He has the same kind of car that was seen in front of the residence. And oh yeah, he also has bushy eyebrows. 5:30 a.m. After traveling in the area south of Moscow, Koberger's phone is detected back in Poland. So at 5:30, Brian Koberger is back home. The cell phone towers pick up his phone. Again, he's out and about during the time that these murders take place. Here's the intriguing thing. 9:12 a.m., Koberger's phone returns to Moscow and connects to the cellular network near the scene of the murders. It stays there until 9:21 a.m. before returning to the area of his home in Poland. So again, his phone is dinging off a tower in Moscow, Idaho at 9:12 a.m. Now think about this. He's out and about since roughly 2:30. Gets back to Pullman at 5:30. Then you would think that another great alibi, another opportunity to have an alibi, was just to be at home for the rest of the morning. Hell, you just got in at 5:30. But no, he's back out. And his phone dings off a tower near the crime scene again. Now, there's been stories that the defense team is saying, he was out running errands and he was out stargazing from roughly 2:30 to 5:30. He usually spends a lot of time up late at night thinking about some things. He's an avid runner, so he couldn't run. So what he would do is drive around at these hours and stargaze. So even if you buy that excuse, he gets home at about 5:30. And then the moment where he could have another solid alibi in terms of not being near that residence again, he's gone again. And it seems like his phone dinged at 9:12 a.m. until about 9:21 a.m. And then it returned to Pullman, Washington again. And speculation is he was going back to possibly see what was happening at the crime scene or retrieving something that he left. A 911, 11:58 a.m., a 911 call reports an unconscious person at the scene of the killings, triggering a response from law enforcement. Really, really strange case. There were 6 people in the house that night. 4 were killed, 2 survived. One of the roommates saw the intruder, an athletically built person with bushy eyebrows. In a house like that, and the house was strangely built. I don't know if you ever pulled up a picture of the home. It's a pretty unique house. You enter the bottom level from the front of the house. You can enter the back level on the second floor of the house through a sliding glass door. So it's a really uniquely built home. But it wasn't big enough, in my opinion, to drown out so much sound. As a matter of fact, I saw an interview with a former tenant of the home who had rented that house a few years ago, and he said everywhere you step in the home, you just hear creaks and the house settling. You can hear someone walking up the stairs. It was a very noisy house. So when I think about the 2 surviving roommates, I think to myself, if there was a murder going on the 3rd floor, and I guess I should go through piece by piece what police feels like happened during the course of these horrific events. It felt like the intruder came through a sliding glass door, headed up to the 3rd floor. Kaylee was up there with her roommate, and she was visiting, like I said, and something happened. Madison, Mogan, and Kaylee were the first to get hit on the 3rd floor. Brutal crime. My speculation is that had to be noisy. You had the dog probably hearing some things. I would assume people were scrambling and screaming. And my assumption is that had to be heard at least down to the 2nd floor of that house. Ethan was there with his girlfriend, Xana. She had just gotten a DoorDash. So they were wide awake. They weren't asleep. You can safely assume because they had just gotten DoorDash. Ethan and Xana had to hear that noise. Their room was pretty close to the steps. My guess is Ethan probably goes out to check it out and runs into the killer coming down the stairs, and he engages with the killer. He's brutally stabbed. His girlfriend had to have seen this. I think that's safe to assume. And now she has to engage with the killer. 4 people dead right away. What are the 2 surviving roommates hearing? What are they doing? The one roommate who lived on the 2nd floor, she opened the door several times as the noises were happening, and she yells up basically to her roommates, telling them to quiet down. And then she hears what sounds like crying coming from Xana's room. And then she hears a male voice saying, "I'm here to help you." And the last time she opens the door, she sees an athletically built person in black with a mask and bushy eyebrows. Now think about this. All of the commotion, all of the stuff that's going on, 4 people. And I'm an open-minded thinker. I suppose that there is a chance that all of these killings happened silently or quietly. There's a chance. Someone used to always tell me nothing is impossible. So you have to have an open mind to be a good common sense person. You can't close yourself off and think, well, there had to be noise. I would think that there would have been noise, but I guess it doesn't have to be. But my guess is, out of the 4 people that were killed, you mean to tell me there wasn't a bump, a thump, a scream, a yell, a screech in pain, yelling? Nothing that the surviving roommates couldn't hear? And then you open the door, you see this intruder leaving, and you lock yourself in. That behavior, I can totally understand. I get it. Locking yourself in the room. I don't want this intruder to get me. What I don't understand is that was 4:30-ish in the morning. The 911 call wasn't made until 11:58 a.m. What was happening during that time? That time span is crucial to filling in all the pieces of the case. Until there's a trial, and until you hear what happened and what those roommates were thinking, the door is open for all kinds of speculation. All kinds of speculation. Fast forward, the Idaho police are trying to find the killer. They sent an announcement out to campus, rightfully so. There's a lot of angst on campus and a lot of fear. They don't know if there's a serial killer running around, what's going on. But the police assured them that they were not in danger. How they knew that, I don't know. We talked about the white Elantra. There was a security guard on the campus of Washington State that ran the license plates of every person in the area that went to Washington State University that owned a white Elantra, and basically came back to Brian Koberger. I'm not going to get into details. There's so much information that I'm just going to skim over that. Brian Koberger, fast forward, father came up to visit him. He had planned to go home for Christmas. His father came up to take the long drive back from Pullman, Washington to Pennsylvania, more specifically the Poconos. That's where Brian Koberger was from. Along the way, stopped twice by police for tailgating, which I find really peculiar. Think about the chances. You've just committed a murder in a white Elantra. And then I want you to think about from the state of Washington all the way to Pennsylvania in the Poconos. That's a long trip, man. And then I want you to think about all of the cars from Washington to Pennsylvania that are on the highways. This has got to be thousands. I mean, the number has to be just astronomical. And Brian Koberger's car was stopped twice within 10 minutes of each other. There was the first stop. The cop warned him about tailgating. 10 minutes later, there was a second stop with another cop warning him about tailgating. What are the odds? Again, I'm open-minded enough to say that I guess that's not impossible. But again, my question is, what are the odds? And I know there's been video released about those stops, and I'm not going to speculate whether or not Brian Koberger looked guilty. Again, that's speculation. You can interpret that video the way you want to interpret it, but long story short, they end up getting back to Pennsylvania, and the whole time he's there, he's just doing strange things. He's cleaning his car, with bleach. He's obsessively cleaning his car. He's wearing rubber gloves everywhere. And there's reports that his sister talked to his dad and said, I think Brian may have had something to do with those kids getting murdered up in Idaho. See, she's a common sense thinker. She probably put together how strange her brother is acting. She probably put together, hey, my brother has a white Elantra. And she knows her brother's troubles that he's had growing up. So she's just putting all the pieces together. Parents are very emotional, so dad doesn't want to hear it. But anyway, Brian Koberger is seen obsessively cleaning his car. And not only is he cleaning his car, but he's putting his garbage in his neighbor's garbage. See, my thinking is, this is just common sense. I would think that he's so far away from Moscow, Idaho, where these events took place, that you would think he would have a level of comfort. But I think that level of comfort got washed away with those two stops by the police on the highway. Now, the police claim those were just random stops. They had no purpose. But I think Brian Koberger has common sense like I do. The odds of getting stopped twice in 10 minutes is astronomical. You have a better chance of getting hit by lightning. For it to be completely random and the same reason was given for the stops, tailgating. So he's putting garbage in his neighbor's garbage to be set out for the garbage collectors to come and collect. Who does that? Raise your hand if you've ever put your own personal garbage in your neighbor's garbage. I would love to see the percentage of people that do that. He's at home with his parents, and reports are from his sister and his parents is that he's wearing gloves everywhere in the house. The police see him dump his garbage in his neighbor's house. They grab some of it, send it to the lab back in Idaho. They get DNA off of it, and the DNA comes back as positive for a relative of Koberger's dad. So what they got, because Brian Koberger was wearing gloves, was his father's DNA. And the DNA matched someone that had to be related to Brian Koberger's dad. Astronomical. So for people that are on the side of, well, he's innocent until proven guilty, I mean, this is damning. And when that came back, when the DNA came back as a positive match to a relative, at the time, no one knew but the police that a knife sheath had been found underneath Maddie Mogan. That DNA on the night sheet was matched to Brian Koberger. And I don't care about if it was touch DNA or not. You combine the touch DNA, which supposedly is probably the weakest DNA that you can have in a court case, but you put it together with the white Elantra, you put it together with no alibi really during the time, you put it together with coming back to the crime scene, you put it together with the gloves, the obsessive cleaning of the car and dumping garbage in your neighbor's garbage. You start putting all that stuff together and it's just strange. For people that think that he is not the guy, how do you push away and wash away all of that evidence? And here's the cherry on top of the sundae. Now since they have his phone, they went back and looked at his phone records, and it showed that he had been around that residence 12 times before the killings during the late night hours. So you can speculate from that he's watching and waiting and stalking. It's intriguing. It's scary. The case, I won't say it's at a standstill, but I know that the parents of the slain victims are waiting for the jury trial to start. And you got all the pre-trial court proceedings and things are just kind of dragging along. I don't believe that they've set a court date, but the Idaho murder case is just intriguing. And it gets lost, where the case gets lost is all the focus is on Brian Koberger. And, I honestly can't blame the media for that because honestly, he's just an intriguing person. And UP Nation, I haven't even covered a tenth of all the stuff in the case. It would just be too much. This would be a 5-hour podcast. And this is just a detour for the day. But it's going to be interesting to hear the information during the jury trial. What the surviving roommates have to say. That's what I'm waiting about. And I will say this, there is a chance that this thing may not even go to trial. I think when faced with all the evidence, I think Brian Koberger eventually will take a plea deal if the prosecution is willing to put that on the table. If you haven't heard of the Idaho murder case, and you're into true crime and want to know more about the case, look it up. There's a lot of information out there, a ton of it. I just covered a little bit through it. I just gave you a brief synopsis of what was going on. It's a sad case. It's a really, really intriguing case. The 4 college students that were killed were just tremendous people. And so what they were all about tends to get lost in all of the forensics and the details of the case. But there were 4 human beings that came from great families that were lost. And that's really, really unfortunate. We just covered a little bit of it. I know some of the UP Nation members wanted me to talk about it. They said whenever you should see some of the suggestions that I get for detours. This one hit me because I was very familiar with the case. So I thought that I would come on and talk about it for those that were not familiar with the case. The Idaho murders, hopefully the families get justice. That's what I'm hoping for. So just a little detour until, some hot topics with sports in Minnesota, some things that we need to discuss sports wise, pop back up. But this has been Unconventional Playbook. Thanks for tuning in. I will see you when I see you.
Powered by Riverside.